Hey everybody, welcome to Q&A video number 68. Make sure to keep asking questions. Doesn't matter they're about. They can be about anything. Just know I do not respond to review requests or Let's Play requests in these videos, but I will respond to those in the comments. Once again, a review request or an MTO request is basically what do you think about insert game here. I'm not going to answer that in a Q&A, so don't ask. I may add it to the list if it's not already on there, but do yourself a favor if you're going to request something, and check the master list first, because chances are it's probably on there, and if it isn't, then, well, I can add it on there, no problem. But anyway, if you do not ask questions that are good for Q&As, then I actually can't do any more Q&As, so make sure to keep asking them. Gameplay in the background is of Watch Dogs, which I've been attempting to go through recently, but it's been slow and actually pretty boring. But it does tie into the first question here, which is from Bulbatrance. What is your view on having a completionist mentality when it comes to games? Have you ever played a game past the point of it still being fun or entertaining just for the sake of completing it? I haven't really played a game that I actually took a completionist mentality on other than Papers, Please, and that was because I really enjoyed Papers, Please, and even then I didn't really actually go on a completionist run, I just got all the achievements. So really I haven't gone on a completionist run, but so many games are full of what I would describe as busy work, things like Watch Dogs, where there's a lot of side activities and collectibles and such, but they're really just there to have them. They're not really a integral part of the game. They aren't really something that is really beneficial to your experience playing it, and that's what the vast majority of collectibles and such are in these various games that have them. So I just don't bother with them for the most part. If it's something that's actually legitimately interesting, like a lot of the side content in, say, Witcher 3, then I might stick with it for longer, but generally speaking, I don't really take a completionist mindset on things, and I kind of look at people who do as crazy, and that's not necessarily a condemnation. I mean, sure, you're kind of obsessive with it if you're going on a completionist mentality, so I have every right to call you crazy to some degree, but understand that's not a condemnation, that's just me making fun of you. Moving on to a question from Abbas Bombus. What is your opinion on VR, and do you ever plan on getting a Vive or a Rift? I don't plan on getting them because they are ludicrously expensive right now, and they require you to have a mind-bogglingly powerful rig to actually be able to run VR games. Us plebs can't really afford them right now, and of course our rigs aren't exactly the most powerful. I mean, mine's still rather beefy, don't get me wrong, but it's not the highest end rig out there, and I don't upgrade constantly. I usually end up building a new rig every 6 to 8 years, and in the case of the current rig I've got, I actually ended up having to save my money for over a year in order to actually be able to afford to get it, and even then I actually had to make a few sacrifices to actually be able to afford that, so obviously I'm not going to get a Vive or a Rift unless for some baffling reason I end up with a ludicrous amount of income all of a sudden, which isn't going to happen. But anyway, the fact that it's a headset really is what bothers me, because when I think of VR, I think of a full-on system where you're interacting with everything with your own body as opposed to holding a controller in your hands and just looking around. That just doesn't seem all that great to me, and unless I actually got a chance to try it for myself, I'm actually kind of afraid I would get motion sick from it. But that's just how it is in its current state. Obviously, I'm excited for the future of VR. When the technology ends up becoming much more affordable and much better than it is in its current state, then I can see myself at least trying it out a bit more and being more excited about how it actually improves games. But right now, it doesn't seem like it improves games all that much, and there's only a handful of games that would actually be kind of interesting to me, one of them being Eve Valkyrie, and that's just because I'm a space combat nerd. I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head that's in any somewhat finished state at any rate. So who knows where this will go from here, but as it stands, I'm not all that interested in it. It seems like it's more of a gimmick right now than anything else, and the people freaking out about how it's the future are basically getting way too optimistic for a future that's actually a bit of a ways off. Moving on to a question from Fusion Bunny. What do you make of the Windows 10 only or Windows Store only trend from very recently? I hate it. It's basically Microsoft's attempt at turning Windows 10 into a closed ecosystem. The whole UWP idea is actually pretty terrible when you get down to it. It's basically them trying to turn it into what Apple has with regards to things like iPhones, iPads, and so on. It's turning programs from programs into basically phone and tablet apps, only they're for your desktop rather than phone and tablet. And we've seen with things like Quantum Break where they basically break the game, forcing VSync on severe performance issues, which I'm still not sure if they've actually fixed with regards to the RAM leaks and stuff like that. The complete inability to mod the game files to actually, of course, just put in mods to begin with, but also to do things like tweak the performance. It's just a disaster when you really think about it. And while they are trying to push this whole idea of, well, it's a great thing, all you have to do is just basically hit a checkbox and you got a UWP app and you can just stick that on the store. Sure, it makes it easier, but it's for your closed ecosystem, which not all that many people use, so it's already pretty much a failure, and people hate it because it sucks. So congratulations, Microsoft. Your attempt at making games Windows 10 and Windows Store exclusive have ultimately resulted in people just looking at Windows 10 as really not a good gaming platform. It's basically games for Windows Live, only worse because it's Windows 10 only. At least Windows 10 is free up until, I think, June or July of this year, but I'm basically, whenever I do manage to get Windows 10, I'm probably just going to dual boot it because I know that there are a lot of programs that I run on Windows 7 that just simply will not work on Windows 10 because Windows 10 in particular really hates older applications, namely a lot of the ones that use something like Safe Disk, where it just straight up blocks that DRM from functioning at all, so you actually can't run those programs at all. It's pretty infuriating when you get down to it. But hey, at least it's somewhat better than Windows 8. Anyway, moving on to a question from Donald Drumpf. What do you think about the NX and what do you hope for the NX? I don't think about the NX because nothing has been actually confirmed yet other than it's a thing. And I don't really hope for much with it because Nintendo kind of does their own thing. And you just kind of have to roll with it. So as long as they don't go with any ridiculous gimmicks like the big touch screen on the controller, which I've actually used a Wii U tablet controller, and I hate that thing. It's just really uncomfortable. It's hard to really get a good grip on it that actually is comfortable to use. But other than that, the Wii U was just kind of a flop. The Wii itself put everything into motion controls, and they really ended up not being that great. And so, as long as they don't throw in stupid gimmicks, they'll probably do fine. They do need to improve their online system, though. That's something that they've never really been good at, and that's something that the other companies, Sony and Microsoft, have figured out long ago, and they just are kind of rolling in it ever since, because you have, of course, PlayStation Network, you have Xbox Live, both of which, for what they are actually pretty solid services, the problem being that you have to pay for them. But yeah, I'm not going to really speculate on the NX until I actually get some solid information about it, until Nintendo actually announces something from their company itself, other than, hey, this is a project we're working on and we don't have any details right now. And the last question for this particular Q&A is from Bucky Jackrabbit, I think is how you're supposed to pronounce that. It's just JakrbT. Anyway, he is asking, do you think that the games industry is in dire need of a shutdown or reset? Yeah, we pretty much need another 1983. Or at least we need that in the mainstream market. The indie scene is pretty much doing just fine, but the mainstream, the AAA stuff, has stagnated to the point where it's just downright depressing. We are now 3 years into the new console generation, PS4, Xbox One, and there's still nothing that really draws you to the consoles if you own a PC. And while the Wii U has its own exclusives that are actually kind of interesting but fairly limited, there hasn't really been anything released for Xbox One or PS4 that makes me actually want to get one. The vast majority of the games released on them I can just play on PC just fine. In fact, In a lot of cases, the PC version is outright better, at least when there haven't been disastrous PC releases like Mortal Kombat X, or Arkham Knight, or Watch Dogs, or just about anything from Ubisoft lately apart from Rainbow Six Siege, which they mostly sorted those technical problems out already. But when you really look at things, the industry just keeps gravitating more and more toward what I describe as money pits. They're all about the microtransactions, they're all about the DLC, they're all about squeezing as much money out of the customer as possible, not about providing a quality gaming experience. I mean, you have the prime example of Evolve, which is basically dead at this point, and it hasn't even been out all that long, and a big chunk of that is due to how just bland and uninteresting the gameplay is, in addition to the fact that they're constantly shoving the DLC in your face. The Star Wars Battlefront reboot was a blatant cash-in that's all about the money and not about actually being a good game. They're just getting dumbed down to rake in as much money as possible from as wide a group of people as possible, and so we're basically just swimming in a sea of mediocrity. Games that, at best, are just fairly average. This far into the new console generation, we should have had some drastically new things to really shake the industry up, but it's still all pretty much the same stuff we saw from last gen, and last gen started in about 2005, I think. So think about it this way. The games we're playing now are basically the same as the games we were playing back in 2005 and 2006. They're just prettier. And it really does feel that way. There are so many games out there that are just bland and uninteresting because we've played them all before. Hell, even my Game of the Year for 2015 was really just a refinement of things that came before. It was really good, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't anything truly new about Witcher 3. But even then, the passion the team had just is palpable when you actually play the game. You really do feel like there was a dedicated team that really wanted to make as good a game as they possibly could, and it really does show. Meanwhile, you play something like the reboot of Battlefront, and it just reeks of corporate cash-in. There are so ridiculously few games coming out of the AAA scene that actually do scream, hey, we actually had a lot of creativity here, and even if we weren't necessarily doing something new, we were doing a really strong refinement of things that came before, we tried to put our own spin on things. That's just not really a thing anymore. They're just following the leader, or if they're not following the leader, they're just kind of sitting back and doing the exact same thing they've been doing for quite a while. And sooner or later, something has to give. The quality needs to keep going up, not sit there at basically 2007 levels. You can throw all the fancy graphics on a game that you want, but if you're just copying things that have come before, say you're making another cover-based shooter, if you don't do something to make it different from basically every other third-person shooter at this point, then who's really going to give a crap? Certainly not me. At any rate, that was Q&A 68. Make sure to keep asking questions. As I mentioned before, I cannot make these videos unless you give me questions. So thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in later videos.